The human psyche is a complex labyrinth capable of both astounding acts of kindness and unimaginable depths of darkness. Throughout history, the tales of individuals who turned to cannibalism have left an indelible mark on our collective consciousness. In this exploration, we delve into the unsettling stories of four cannibals who tried to eat their cellmates. From the ghastly confinements of prison cells to the fringes of society, these stories shed light on the darkest corners of the human experience. Meet Doran Gilvargas, Robert Mosley, Nicholas Cocaine, and Paul Fitzgerald. Names that evoke both curiosity and dread. Doran Gilvargas. In the annals of criminal history, there exist stories that push the boundaries of human comprehension, tales that plunge us into the darkest recesses of the human psyche. Among them is the chilling account of José Doran Gilvargas Gómez, a name that has become synonymous with horror and disbelief. Known by the haunting moniker El Comediante, which translates to people eater, Vargas's actions would grip a nation in fear and fascination. Born into poverty in 1957, Doran Gilvargas came into the world with humble origins, the son of struggling farmers. As the pages of his life turned, they would come to be stained with an indelible darkness that defies explanation. His early brushes with the law, minor offenses like theft, hinted at a troubled existence, but it wasn't until his arrest for murder and cannibalism that his true nature emerged. Vargas's story takes us to the city of San Cristobal in Táchira, Venezuela, where the tranquility of a park would become a hunting ground for his gruesome desires. Homeless and unnoticed, he stalked passers-by, seeking out unsuspecting victims. When the authorities finally apprehended him, his confession shattered the boundaries of human cruelty. He admitted to a spree of terror that involved not only the killing of at least 11 men, but the unspeakable act of consuming their flesh. The years leading to his 1999 arrest were marked by a series of inexplicable and macabre events. Vargas's prey were primarily men, and his choice of weapons ranged from a tube-shaped spear to primitive rocks. He exhibited a sinister method in his madness, sparing women and children, explaining that he deemed them too pure for his gruesome appetites. The remains of his victims told a harrowing tale of brutality, with feet, hands, and heads typically discarded, while the rest was turned into a macabre feast. As the investigation into the chilling discoveries progressed, the shocking truth emerged. The makeshift shack that Vargas called home near the crime scenes became a nightmarish repository of human remains, vessels filled with human flesh, visceral horrors prepared for consumption, and the ghastly collection of severed heads and limbs painted a picture of a mind unhinged, a soul that had strayed far from the realms of humanity. But even behind bars, the darkness within Vargas persisted. In 2016, he became involved in a prison riot, a brutal event that resulted in the deaths of two fellow inmates. A disturbing twist followed as it was revealed that their remains had been served to other prisoners, a testament to the depths of depravity that continued to define Vargas's existence. In the chapters that follow, we will unravel the layers of Doran Gilvargas's life, seeking to understand the motivations that propelled him down a path of unspeakable horror. From his upbringing in poverty to his transformation into the El Comediante that would haunt the nightmares of a nation. This is a story that challenges our understanding of humanity's darkest capabilities. Known by the ominous aliases El Comediante or the Eater, and sometimes referred to as the Hannibal Lecter of the Andes, Vargas is no ordinary inmate. His life is a journey through the darkest corridors of criminality, an exploration of the abyss where the lines between humanity and monstrosity blur. Secluded within a basement cell, even the jailers who oversee him are gripped by a palpable unease, a testament to the aura of terror he exudes. In the annals of criminal history, 1999 stands as a haunting chapter. It was then that Vargas stepped into the spotlight of infamy, confessing to an unthinkable spree of violence that defied comprehension. With a coldness that sends shivers down the spine, he admitted to the killing and consumption of at least 11 men. Yet, the truth behind the numbers may be even more harrowing, with suspicions suggesting his true toll could reach as high as 40 lives. "I eat people," Vargas declared, a chilling admission that resonates like a bone-chilling echo through the corridors of the station. As the candles flicker on his birthday cake within the confines of his cell, the macabre reality of his actions looms large. The details of his crimes, each more gruesome than the last, paint a picture of a mind consumed by darkness. His culinary inclinations, involving tongues in stew and eyes in soup, are a grotesque testament to a soul untethered from the norms of humanity. During a jailhouse riot, Gómez, with the help of some 40 other prisoners, brutally murdered 3 convicts who were then strung up and left to bleed out. Gómez then reportedly dismembered the body bodies and is alleged to have given some parts to his fellow prisoners to eat. Even after being locked up, Gomez continued to boast of his cannibalistic tendencies and refused to accept that he should be imprisoned. "I used to eat the thighs," he said, "not the nose, ears, or hands because they are too hard. If I saw a drunkard sleeping, I would kill him with my spear, cut his head off, and feel happy. I want to go back there and dig a big hole to bury them. I don't feel ashamed of anything. They have put me in this jail for nothing." As we delve further into the grim tapestry of Jose Doran Gilvargas Gomez's life, a chilling mosaic of violence and depravity emerges, painting a portrait of a man who sought to satisfy his darkest desires in the most grotesque of ways. In the park of San Cristobal, an unassuming scene that should have been a sanctuary for relaxation became a hunting ground for the unimaginable. To the casual observer, Vargas might have blended into the landscape as just another homeless figure, but within the twisted corridors of his mind, he saw potential victims among the passers-by, people who unknowingly strolled into his demented fantasies of consumption. While the phrase "beggars can't be choosers" often resonates, Vargas turned this adage on its head. In his own way, he meticulously chose his prey, watching the park's visitors with a chilling intensity akin to how one might scan a conveyor belt for specific dishes at a restaurant. His tastes were far from conventional. He wasn't seeking out gourmet delicacies. Instead, he had a macabre appetite for a particular part of the human anatomy: calves and the muscle-rich thighs that accompanied them. Between 1997 and 1999, this park that had been a haven for many transformed into a graveyard under Vargas's sinister influence. His tally of victims reached at least 11, a haunting mix of joggers, drunken souls who fell asleep in the wrong place at the wrong time. Armed with a makeshift spear crafted from metal tubing, he stalked his victims with an eerie precision, descending upon them like a shadow in the night. The fatal blows came in the form of crude rocks, wielded with a merciless brutality that matched the darkness lurking within him. But it wasn't just the act of killing that defined Vargas's depravity. It was the eerie culinary rituals that followed. Upon his arrest, he shockingly revealed his predilection for consuming human flesh. His admission cut through the air with a chilling nonchalance. "Sure, I eat people." In his twisted worldview, he believed anyone could partake in such a gruesome act, provided they followed certain culinary precautions. His method of preparation, outlined with grotesque detail, included washing and garnishing the flesh to avoid diseases, a stark contrast to the horror that lay beneath. His culinary preferences took a grisly turn as he divulged his penchant for specific body parts. Thighs and calves, the seats of muscle, were his favored cuts. He spoke of crafting a very tasty stew with the tongue and using eyes to concoct a nutritious and healthy soup. These descriptions, dripping with a perverse culinary expertise, stripped the acts of cannibalism of any lingering doubt. They revealed a mind that had sunk into an abyss of deviance, where the line between gastronomy and atrocity had been obliterated. Robert Mosley. Moving on to Robert Mosley brings us face to face with another enigmatic figure whose actions challenge our understanding of the human psyche and the depths of darkness one can descend into. Known as the Hannibal the Cannibal within prison walls, Mosley's life is a haunting study in the intersection of violence and cannibalism. The enigma of Robert John Mosley beckons, a figure whose life etched a twisted tale of violence and darkness that leaves us grappling with the complexity of human nature. Born on June 26, 1953, Mosley's name resonates with the echoes of multiple murders, an unsettling chronicle that defies easy understanding. Mosley's journey through life bore witness to a series of chilling events. He embarked on a harrowing path, marked by 4 deaths that cast shadows over different settings, a psychiatric hospital and 2 prison cells. It was within these walls that the extent of his brutality emerged, earning him a reputation that would echo through the corridors of justice. Initially, reports swirled with chilling tales of his actions, fueled by rumors that he had consumed part of a victim's brain. These sensationalistic narratives earned him the moniker Hannibal the Cannibal, a name that resonated with the darkest corners of human fascination. Yet the truth would later reveal itself in a different light. According to the post-mortem report and subsequent advisories from the Press Complaints Commission, the initial allegations proved untrue, unraveling the sinister myth that had taken hold. Amid the cacophony of headlines and nicknames, Robert Mosley's existence was one defined by isolation, a poignant and stark contrast to the notoriety that surrounded him. He holds the dubious distinction of being the longest-serving British prisoner to have endured the agony of solitary confinement. Born as the 4th of 12 children in Speke, Liverpool, Mosley's early years were marked by adversity. Placed in a Catholic orphanage in Crosby alongside his older siblings, his formative years were cloaked in the shadow of a dysfunctional family. At the age of 8, he was reunited with his parents, only to endure physical abuse at the hands of his father. The scars of this trauma ran deep, shaping the contours of a troubled psyche. As the late 1960s unfolded, Mosley's trajectory took a haunting turn. The vibrant streets of London became a backdrop for his life as a sex worker, a means to support a drug addiction that had ensnared him. Faced with the horrors of his own existence, he sought solace in the arms of psychiatric help, revealing a tormented soul racked by suicide attempts. It was during these sessions that he spoke of hearing voices, compelling him towards murdering his father and mother, an act that, in his own twisted logic, might have averted the future horrors he would later perpetrate. Maudsley's story serves as a reminder that the human experience is woven from threads of complexity, darkness, and a capacity for cruelty that challenges our understanding of morality itself. The chilling chronicle of Robert Maudsley's life unfolds, revealing a pattern of violence and darkness that defies comprehension. In the year 1974, a macabre event etched its mark on London. John Farrell, a man whose dark desires had led him down a twisted path, crossed paths with Maudsley. Picked up for sex, Farrell allegedly revealed a sinister side, showing Maudsley pictures of children he had sexually abused. Driven to a breaking point, Maudsley committed an act of terror that would alter the course of his life. Garroting Farrell, he surrendered to the police, declaring his need for psychiatric care. Deemed unfit for trial, Maudsley found himself consigned to the confines of Broadmoor Hospital. It was within the walls of Broadmoor that another horrific episode would unfold. In 1977, Maudsley and fellow patient David Cheeseman locked themselves in a cell with a third patient, David Francis, a convicted child molester. The motive, supposedly rooted in revenge for a homosexual attack, descended into a 9-hour-long torture session that culminated in Francis's death. The grim tableau of violence saw Maudsley convicted of manslaughter and subsequently transferred to Wakefield Prison, a place he vehemently protested against, yearning for the familiarity of Broadmoor. But Maudsley's descent into darkness did not abate within Wakefield's walls. In a single day in 1978, he enacted a brutal spree of killings that sent shockwaves through the prison. Salney Darwood, imprisoned for murdering his wife, became Maudsley's first victim. In a horrifying act, Maudsley invited Darwood into his cell, garroting and stabbing him before concealing the body beneath his bed. This grotesque act was just the beginning, as Maudsley's thirst for violence proved insatiable. Turning his sights to his second victim, William Roberts, who lay defenseless in his bed, Maudsley unleashed an unfathomable level of brutality. The makeshift dagger he wielded carved into Roberts's flesh, his skull hacked repeatedly against the unforgiving prison walls. Maudsley's chilling calmness persisted as he walked into the wing office, depositing the blood-soaked weapon on a table. His message was stark. The next roll call would be missing 2 names. Behind these acts of violence lay a chilling motive. Maudsley claimed his victims were rapists, pedophiles, or sex offenders. In his twisted logic, he saw himself as a harbinger of punishment, targeting those he deemed deserving of his wrath. This self-appointed role further shrouded his actions in a cloak of eerie justification. Maudsley's early life was a tumultuous journey marked by tragic circumstances. Separated from his parents due to allegations of parental child abuse, Maudsley and his siblings found themselves in a Catholic orphanage. Within its walls, they forged bonds not only with each other, but also with the nuns who presided over the institution. These formative relationships provided brief respites from the turmoil that had defined their lives. Yet Maudsley's return to his family home years later brought only a resurgence of pain. The very parents from whom he had been removed now subjected him and his siblings to physical abuse. An environment characterized by violence and neglect led to a fractured home where love seemed like a distant memory. The scars of his past ran deep, fueling a cycle of despair. This cycle culminated in Maudsley's entry into a world of drugs and sex work as a means of escape. A chance encounter with his first victim, John Farrell, would set off a chain of events that would forever shroud his name in infamy. The murder of Farrell became a haunting prelude to Maudsley's trajectory into the heart of darkness. Found unfit for trial due to his turbulent mental state, he was confined to Broadmoor Hospital. Yet even within these walls, the violence did not abate. Maudsley's involvement in the torture and murder of David Francis stands as a stark testament to the depths he was willing to descend. The hours of brutality he and his accomplice inflicted revealed a twisted thirst for vengeance, born from their perception of Francis as a child molester. The circumstances surrounding this event are shrouded in macabre details, feeding a narrative of cannibalism that only serves to compound the horror. Transferred to Wakefield Prison, Maudsley's murderous streak continued. The cold-blooded killings of Salney Darwood and William Roberts sent shockwaves through the prison's halls. The chilling details of these murders, carried out with ruthless precision, showcased a mind teetering on the precipice of its darkest urges. Solitary confinement became Maudsley's grim reality, a response to the threat he posed to others. His life became a testament to the complexities of rehabilitation and punishment. Confined to a specially constructed glass cell reminiscent of a cage, he remained a figure of intrigue compared to fictional counterparts like Hannibal Lecter. The moniker Hannibal the Cannibal etched itself into the annals of history, a reflection of the sensationalistic media's portrayal of Maudsley's actions. This label, born from a guard's alleged claim, conjured images of horror reminiscent of a cinematic villain. Yet beneath the sensationalism lay a mind that defied easy categorization. isolation. As years turned into decades, Maudsley's isolation weighed heavy on his soul. His attempts to find solace through various requests for a pet bird, a television, or even the release of death reveal the depths of his despair. The man who had once sought to end the lives of others found himself confronting the darkness within his own psyche. In his complex, contradictory, and haunting journey, Robert Maudsley stands as a reminder that the human experience is not easily confined to black and white. His story forces us to confront the blurred lines between good and evil, sanity and madness, and the relentless pursuit of understanding in the face of darkness. Nicholas Cocaine. Moving on to our third entry, we delve into the unsettling case of Nicholas Cocaine, a name that sends shivers down the spine and highlights the disturbing state of mental health care within French detention centers. This gory incident not only raises chilling questions about the thin line between sanity and madness, but also draws eerie parallels with past horrors, such as the case of Issey Sagawa. Nicholas Cocaine, a 35-year-old prisoner, has been thrust into the public eye due to a shocking act that seems to have come straight out of a psychological thriller. Cocaine's alleged actions echo the fictional character Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs, as he apparently consumed portions of a fellow inmate's lungs and chest. The disturbing resemblance between reality and fiction is not lost on us. The victim in this horrifying tale was Thierry Baudry, a 31-year-old inmate whose life came to a tragic end within the confines of a prison cell at Rouen Prison in northwest France. Baudry's life was brutally taken in a manner that can only be described as nightmarish. He endured beatings, cuts from scissors and a razor, strangulation, and finally, asphyxiation using a plastic bag. Cocaine's cellmate was also implicated in the crime, charged as an accessory to this gruesome murder. As details emerged, it was alleged that Cocaine might have taken his heinous act a step further, possibly even cooking and preparing the organs he allegedly consumed. The presence of a saucepan with fat and onion samples found in the cell adds a disturbing layer to this already horrifying narrative. The psychological dimensions of this case cannot be ignored. Experts have speculated that Cocaine suffered from major schizophrenia, a mental disorder that can cast a shadow of violence and instability. The prison environment may have triggered a regression into a state of deep anguish and rage, resulting in this macabre outburst of violence. Cocaine's own explanation is as chilling as the act itself. He claimed that his sudden urge was ignited by his cellmate's failure to adhere to prison rules. This raises a harrowing question. How well can mental illness be detected within the prison population, and how can institutions effectively manage individuals who carry the burden of such disorders? However, accountability also falls on the prison system. Cocaine's lawyer, Fabien Picciotino, has criticized the authorities for not heeding early warnings and taking preventative measures. The failure to provide appropriate psychiatric care or to follow recommendations, such as placing Cocaine in solitary confinement, casts a spotlight on the inadequacies within the system. Nicholas Cocaine's case is a haunting reminder of the delicate balance that exists within the minds of individuals and the urgent need for comprehensive mental health care within correctional facilities. It forces us to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche and underscores the responsibility society bears in addressing mental illness, even within the most confined and challenging environments. The chilling cases of cannibalism are not confined to a single region, but have sent shockwaves across the world, revealing the darkest corners of human behavior. In July 2004, another horrifying incident occurred within a French prison. A 36-year-old convicted murderer took the gruesome act of consuming another human being to a new level. He brutally cracked open the skull of an inmate, shocking prison wardens as they discovered him eating the victim's brains with his bare hands. Germany, too, witnessed a disturbing case in 2001 when Armin Meiwes sought out a willing victim for cannibalism through the internet. This macabre encounter resulted in the victim's penis being cut off and consumed by Meiwes, sautéed with salt, pepper, and garlic. The act was filmed and captured on camera, and Meiwes even froze other body parts for future consumption. Despite these heinous acts, what followed was a bizarre turn of events. Declared unfit for trial in France, Meiwes was deported to Japan, where he spent only 15 months in a hospital before being released. To add to the disturbing narrative, he transitioned into a novelist and achieved a level of celebrity. His written words further showcased his disturbing lack of remorse, describing his acts in grotesque detail. His descriptions of the experience, such as comparing the taste of flesh to raw tuna, are a chilling testament to his callousness. In Britain, a case from 1998 stands as another shocking example of human depravity. 23-year-old man named David Harker strangled his girlfriend and then proceeded to consume consume parts of her thigh. These grisly acts were combined with pasta and cheese, creating a disturbing mixture of violence and consumption. However, the story that truly stands out for its sheer brutality and lack of empathy is that of Issei Sagawa. A student at the Sorbonne University in Paris during 1981, Sagawa invited a Dutch girl to his home for dinner. What followed was an incomprehensible act of horror. He shot her, engaged in necrophilia, and proceeded to consume her body, piece by piece. These cases, though extreme and horrifying, serve as a stark reminder of the complexity of human psychology and the potential for darkness that exists within us all. They challenge us to confront the deepest corners of human nature, raising questions about the bounds of morality, the fragility of sanity, and the capacity for unspeakable cruelty. Paul Fitzgerald. Moving on to the last entry in our list of cannibals who tried to eat their cellmate, we come across the story of Paul Fitzgerald, who had murdered a fellow prisoner who has often been dubbed as Britain's worst pedophile. Paul Fitzgerald, the individual responsible for the murder of fellow inmate Richard Huckle, has been sentenced to life in prison for the killing, further highlighting the deeply disturbing nature of his actions and mindset. Fitzgerald's motive for the murder was described as poetic justice, as he sought to make Huckle experience the pain that his victims had endured. The details of the attack are horrifying and showcase Fitzgerald's violent and sadistic tendencies. The assault occurred at HMP Full Sutton in East Yorkshire, where Fitzgerald executed a meticulously planned attack on Huckle. He strangled Huckle with an electrical cable sheath and inflicted a fatal stab wound to the brain with a pen. In addition to the physical violence, Fitzgerald claimed to have sexually assaulted Huckle during the attack. The intention behind the assault was not only to end Huckle's life, but also to degrade and humiliate him, reflecting Fitzgerald's deeply disturbing mindset. During his trial, Fitzgerald displayed a lack of remorse and a chilling lack of empathy. He laughed throughout the sentencing and appeared nonchalant as his sentence was read out. His previous convictions for violent and sexual offenses, including false imprisonment of a female prison officer, underscored the extent of his dangerous behavior. Mr. Justice Lavender, who presided over the case, labeled Fitzgerald as a psychopath and highlighted his pleasure derived from fantasies of violence, torture, and even cannibalism. The judge emphasized that Fitzgerald's actions were driven by his sadistic desires and that he relished the attention he received following the murder. Huckle, the victim in this case, was no stranger to heinous crimes himself. Having abused 191 children, some as young as 6 months, he was given 22 life sentences in 2016. Huckle targeted vulnerable children in Malaysia, exploiting their circumstances for his own gratification. His actions earned him the moniker Britain's worst pedophile. Huckle's case brought to light the disturbing extent of his sexual abuse against vulnerable children, revealing the dark and predatory nature of his actions. Huckle's crimes spanned several years, during which he posed as a Christian teacher and freelance photographer to gain access to his victims. He exploited the trust of the communities he was a part of, targeting impoverished children in Malaysia. Huckle believed that these children were more vulnerable and less likely to report his abuses. His manipulation extended to creating a facade of respectability, which enabled him to continue his reign of terror unchecked. In 2016, Huckle was finally arrested and faced the consequences of his actions. He was convicted of a staggering 71 charges of sexual offenses against children, including the rape and abuse of infants as young as 6 months old. His crimes were so extensive and horrifying that he received 22 life sentences, highlighting the gravity of his offenses. Huckle's actions were deemed so reprehensible that he earned the infamous title of Britain's worst pedophile. Huckle's journey into depravity began with a sinister twist as he embarked on a so-called gap year that marked the start of his criminal path. Exploiting his status as a trusted Christian teacher and freelance photographer, he insidiously wormed his way into the lives of defenseless children. His calculated manipulation allowed him to carry out a litany of sexual offenses against at least 191 children, some of whom were as young as 6 months old. Operating predominantly in Malaysia, Huckle preyed on the vulnerability of impoverished children, believing that their circumstances would make them easier targets. This predatory behavior exemplified a chilling calculation and a complete disregard for the sanctity of innocence. Huckle's own words, as he boasted about his acts in an online guide for other pedophiles, showcased a disturbing arrogance and lack of remorse. The details of Huckle's offenses were deeply disturbing. He kept detailed journals in which he documented his abuses and gave himself pedo points for his crimes. He also sold images of his abuse on the dark web, further profiting from his heinous acts. His calculated and systematic exploitation of innocent children sent shockwaves through society and underscored the need for stringent measures against such predators. Huckle's case prompted discussions about online child exploitation, the importance of safeguarding vulnerable communities, and the role of the justice system system in dealing with such crimes. The severity of his sentence reflected the outrage and horror felt by the public and authorities alike. The irony of Huckle's murder at the hands of Paul Fitzgerald, another violent criminal with his own disturbing history, raises complex questions about justice, accountability, and the intersection of violence within the criminal justice system. Paul Fitzgerald's descent into the darkest depths of criminality culminated in a horrifying act that shocked even the most jaded observers. Fitzgerald's criminal journey began disturbingly early, with his first sex offense occurring when he was just 12 years old. The fact that he targeted a 4-year-old child reveals a disturbing lack of empathy and a deeply troubling trajectory that would continue to unfold over the years. His subsequent offenses, including assaults on both the vulnerable and the elderly, paint a picture of a person who thrived on causing pain and fear. However, it was the brutal murder of Richard Huckle that catapulted Fitzgerald's notoriety to an entirely new level. The details of the crime are beyond gruesome. The strangulation, rape, and stabbing over a prolonged period are chilling to contemplate. Fitzgerald's casual demeanor during his trial and sentencing, along with his disturbing claim that he found too much fun in the act, raises questions about his grasp on the reality of his own actions. Fitzgerald's twisted sense of poetic justice, where he sought retribution against Huckle for his despicable crimes, introduces a complex moral dimension to the case. While Huckle's offenses were unquestionably abhorrent, Fitzgerald's self-appointed role as an avenger challenges the principles of a justice system and exposes the dangers of unchecked vendettas within prison walls. Interestingly, both Fitzgerald and Huckle share unsettling commonalities: a start in criminal behavior from a young age, a penchant for targeting the vulnerable, and the maintenance of records chronicling their twisted deeds. These parallels underscore the significance of early intervention and effective rehabilitation programs to divert individuals away from such destructive paths. The convergence of these two deeply disturbed individuals within the prison environment is an unsettling reminder of the challenges faced by correctional institutions. The Delta Wing, where they both resided, serves as a microcosm of the difficulties inherent in managing those with violent tendencies. This case highlights the need for a comprehensive approach to rehabilitation, security, and mental health support within prisons. Ultimately, the story of Paul Fitzgerald and Richard Huckle is a haunting exploration of the extremes of human behavior. It reminds us of the critical importance of early intervention, mental health awareness, and the constant effort to maintain a just and secure society, even within the walls of our correctional institutions. From the gruesome tales of Doran Gilvargas and Robert Mosley to the disturbing cases of Nicholas Cocaine and Paul Fitzgerald, we've glimpsed into the twisted minds of those who committed acts of unthinkable horror. These narratives serve as a stark warning about the fragility of human morality and the potential for cruelty that exists within even the most ordinary-seeming individuals. That's a wrap for today. If you enjoyed diving into stories like this, click on the video shown on the screen to keep exploring.